You ever watch life happen to other people and wonder why some folks just seem to glide through everything while you feel like you're constantly getting body slammed by circumstances you never saw coming? Like they're playing some completely different game with rules nobody ever taught you. Here's what nobody tells you about that feeling, that constant sense of being blindsided, of getting knocked down just when you thought you had your footing, of feeling like life keeps testing you with the same painful lessons over and over again. Most people think it's just bad luck. Most people think some folks are just born under a lucky star, while others get stuck with the storm clouds. But what if I told you there's actually a pattern to all of this? What if the reason life keeps breaking you isn't because you're cursed, or because the universe has it out for you, but because you're doing something that almost everyone does without even realizing it? Something so automatic, so deeply programmed into how we approach life that we can't even see we're doing it. See, most people go through life like they're trying to control a river with their bare hands. They grip onto outcomes, squeeze situations until their knuckles turn white, force conversations that want to end, chase opportunities that keep slipping away, hold onto relationships that stopped working months ago. And every time life doesn't bend to their will, every time reality doesn't match their expectations, they feel broken. But here's the thing about rivers. The harder you try to control them, the more they'll knock you down. The more you fight the current, the more exhausted you become. And eventually, you're so tired from battling something that was never meant to be battled that you start thinking you're the problem. That's when life starts feeling heavy. That's when every day becomes about managing crisis instead of actually living. That's when you start wondering why everyone else seems to have figured out some secret you're missing. The secret isn't what you think it is. It's not about getting stronger or tougher or more resilient. It's not about positive thinking or manifesting or grinding harder. The secret is learning when to stop swimming against the current and start moving with it. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds like giving up. That sounds like just accepting whatever life throws at you and becoming passive. But that's not what this is about at all. There's a massive difference between giving up and letting go. There's a huge difference between being passive and being fluid. Think about water for a second. Water doesn't fight the obstacles in its path. It doesn't get angry at the rocks or frustrated with the hills. It simply finds a way around, over, or through. And in doing so, it shapes entire landscapes. It carves canyons, moves mountains, creates valleys, not through force, but through persistence and flow. That's what happens when you stop forcing life to match your timeline, your expectations, your rigid plans. You don't become weak. You become powerful in a completely different way. You start working with reality instead of against it. But most people never learn this because they're too busy fighting battles that don't need to be fought. They're arguing with traffic jams, getting offended by strangers' opinions, trying to control other people's reactions, forcing doors that are clearly meant to stay closed. And every time they do this, life has to teach them the same lesson again. You cannot control what you cannot control. So life keeps breaking you until you finally get it, until you finally stop trying to force everything into the shape you think it should take, until you realize that maybe, just maybe, there's wisdom in the way things unfold naturally when you're not constantly interfering. Here's what that looks like in real life. Instead of forcing a conversation that's going nowhere, you learn to read the room and pivot. Instead of chasing someone who clearly doesn't want to be caught, you focus your energy on people who actually appreciate your presence. Instead of trying to control how others see you, you get comfortable with being misunderstood by people whose opinions don't actually matter. It's not about lowering your standards or settling for less. It's about recognizing the difference between what you can influence and what you need to accept. It's about understanding that some of your best opportunities will come disguised as disappointments. Some of your biggest breakthroughs will happen right after something falls apart. But you'll never see those opportunities if you're too busy fighting reality. You'll never notice the open doors if you're still pounding on the ones that are locked. You'll never hear the better offers if you're still arguing with the ones that said no. Life isn't breaking you to punish you. Life is breaking you to teach you. Every time something doesn't go according to your plan, you get a choice. You can either dig in harder, force more, grip tighter, and exhaust yourself fighting what is, or you can take a breath, step back, and ask yourself what this situation is trying to show you. Maybe it's showing you that your timeline was unrealistic. Maybe it's revealing that you were headed in the wrong direction anyway. Maybe it's teaching you that you're stronger than you thought, or that you've been depending on things that were never actually dependable. Maybe it's clearing space for something better that couldn't come while you were still clinging to something mediocre. The people who seem to glide through life effortlessly, they're not avoiding challenges. They're just not making every challenge into a war. They've learned to bend without breaking. They've figured out that flexibility isn't weakness, it's intelligence. When you stop forcing, something interesting happens. You start noticing things you missed before. You pick up on subtleties in conversations. You sense when to push and when to pull back. You develop an intuition about timing that people who are always rushing never get to experience. You become like a skilled surfer who doesn't fight the wave, but uses its power to go places they could never reach by swimming alone. The wave isn't your enemy, it's your vehicle. But you have to stop trying to control its size, speed, and direction before you can learn to ride it. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop having goals or quit working toward what you want. It means you start working smarter instead of just harder. It means you learn to recognize when you're pushing against a door that says pull. It means you develop the wisdom to know when to persist and when to pivot. Most people spend their entire lives learning this lesson the hard way, getting broken over and over again by the same fundamental misunderstanding about how life works. They think life is something that happens to them, something they have to defend against or conquer. But life isn't your opponent. Life is your dance partner, and you can't dance with someone if you're too busy trying to control every step they take. The moment you understand this, everything changes. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally stop making it harder than it needs to be. You stop creating resistance where none needs to exist. You stop turning minor inconveniences into major dramas. You stop taking everything so personally. And that's when you discover something remarkable. When you're not constantly fighting reality, you have so much more energy for the things that actually matter. When you're not wasting time trying to control the uncontrollable, you can focus on the areas where your effort actually makes a difference. You start building a life that works with your natural rhythms instead of against them. You start attracting opportunities because you're open to them instead of being so focused on forcing specific outcomes that you miss better possibilities. You start connecting with people on a deeper level because you're not constantly trying to manage their impressions of you. Life stops feeling like a series of tests you're failing and starts feeling like a conversation you're finally learning how to have. Now here's where most people miss the entire point. They think letting go means becoming passive, like you're supposed to just drift through life without caring about anything. But that's not what this is about at all. The real shift happens when you understand the difference between flowing with life and forcing it. See, there's this space between effort and surrender that most people never find. It's where you're still taking action, still moving toward what matters, but you're not gripping so tight that you're choking the life out of everything you touch. You're not pushing against doors that are meant to slide open. You're not trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control in the first place. Think about water for a second. Water doesn't fight the riverbank, but it still carves canyons. It doesn't argue with gravity, but it still finds its way to the ocean. That's the energy we're talking about here. Purposeful, but not desperate. Intentional, but not rigid. Moving forward, but not forcing every step. Most people spend their entire lives in one of two extremes. Either they're trying to control everything, micromanaging every detail, stressing about outcomes, white-knuckling their way through life, or they've given up completely, telling themselves nothing matters, using detachment as an excuse to avoid responsibility. But the real power lives in the middle ground. It's showing up fully without needing specific results. It's caring deeply without being attached to how things unfold. It's putting in the work without making your peace dependent on the payoff. This isn't about being indifferent. This is about being free. Because here's what happens when you find that balance. You start making decisions from clarity instead of fear. You stop wasting energy on things that don't actually need your control. You become more present, more responsive, more alive. And paradoxically, when you stop forcing life to happen, it starts happening more beautifully than you ever imagined. The opportunities you've been chasing start showing up naturally. The relationships you've been trying to fix either heal themselves or you realize they weren't meant to be fixed. The goals you've been stressing about either manifest effortlessly, or you discover something even better was waiting for you. But you can't experience any of this while you're still trying to be the director of every scene in your life. You have to learn to trust the process, even when you can't see the full picture. You have to be willing to plant seeds without knowing exactly what will grow. You have to believe that life is working with you, not against you, even when it doesn't feel that way. And look, this isn't always easy. Your mind will resist this shift because it's been trained to believe that if you're not controlling everything, you're failing. But control is often just fear dressed up as responsibility. Real power comes from knowing when to act and when to allow, when to push and when to receive, when to speak and when to listen. The people who seem to have life figured out, they're not the ones with the most detailed plans. They're the ones who've learned to dance with uncertainty. They've stopped fighting the rhythm of life and started moving with it. They've realized that the best things often come not from forcing doors open, but from noticing which doors are already opening. So maybe it's time to ask yourself where you've been forcing instead of flowing, where you've been pushing instead of receiving, where you've been trying so hard to make something happen that you've missed what's already trying to unfold. Because once you stop breaking yourself against life's natural current, you might just discover that life was never trying to break you at all. It was trying to teach you how to flow.